Let me know when you guys are ready. Good? All right. Thank you everyone for coming. My name is Paul Kendall. I am the chair of the Mendez School Building Committee and also a member of the school committee. I want to thank you for coming to our fourth public forum. Tonight we're going to focus on the design options and the building layout. We're going to work through, there's boards as you see on the side. Feel free to go over there and look at them. If it remains a small group, we might actually just use those instead of the presentation up here. There's also some models over on the other side that kind of show you the topography we're working with and some of the siting. So without further ado, I always put up on here the list of committee members. This is a long process. We're over 2 years into it already. Lots of work's been done, so I always want to give them the credit that the team's done a lot of work on it. And so tonight we're going to again focus on that. We'll also go into some sustainability at the end and where we are with that conversation. So without any further ado, I'll turn it over to the project team and we'll lead you through that. Myself, the project team, Mr. Adams, and Mr. Kyer will be here to answer any questions that might come up along the way because we have a lot to get through tonight. We want to give you all the information that we've been chewing over and get any feedback you have on it. So without any further ado, I'll turn it over.
Thanks. Jeff D'Amico, the owner's project manager from Compass Project Management. I'm just going to talk briefly about schedule and then I'll turn it over to the principal to talk a little bit about the differences in the ed program and then the design will be the majority of tonight's presentation. So just to zoom back out where we are in the process, the Mass School Building Authority is a partner in the project with the town, both from a funding standpoint as well as an approval and a process standpoint. So they have three major submissions that will lead to the ultimate project that'll go back before the voters at your next special town meeting this fall. And we're in the middle of the three submissions. So in December, we made the first submission, which was known as the Preliminary Design Program, the PDP. That included evaluation of the existing conditions at this building as well as the sites. We're considering two sites, one, the existing campus here, and the second site is on the middle school. We're also considering two enrollments, one which is the 3 to 5 for 635 students, and one is 845 for 2 through 5. So that was all part of the submission that came in December, where we looked at the educational program and how that might articulate into a new design of a building to make sure we have all the components covered. The third and final piece of that first submission was what we call the long list, where the architects started to put images and layouts in front of the building committee, and they whittled that down a little bit. You'll still see we have a lot of options before the committee for their consideration, which we're going to walk through shortly. But as part of the current submission that we're in right now, which is step 2, we're going to submit the preferred schematic report on May 6th. So in the April timeframe, the school building committee, the school committee, and the board of selectmen or the select board are going to come to a conclusion for their recommendation on what the preferred option would be. And that would be coming down to the final decision on the grade enrollment of whether it's 3 grades or 4 grades, and then the location. Many details will be worked out later, but those two fundamental decisions will need to be made in that April timeframe for the submission by May 6th. The timeline behind me kind of picks up from there. Big picture, just to zoom back out, we submit in May. The MSBA board votes it in the end of June, and from there, the project team works with the building committee to really get to schematic design, which is roughly about 25 to 30% of the design being completed, and then wrap that up in September to submit it back to the MSBA, where their board votes to approve it in October, and then comes back before you and all the voters in a special town meeting currently scheduled for or anticipated for November with a ballot initiative in December. And so that's the current timeline that we initially laid out and what we're still on as we move through the process. And I'm going to turn it over to the principal to talk about the benefits and the pros and cons of those ed plans of the 2 different enrollment sizes, and then the design team will take us through all the various site options.
Hi, so some of you may have seen part of this presentation at the school committee meeting. We did add a strengths and challenges slide regarding the 3 through 5 model as well. But to start, we just want to talk about the current enrollment. When you look at the current enrollment at the Mendez School, the Warren School, and the Pitaway School, it's important to see how many students are currently with us to be able to imagine the growth that's coming our way. So right now, kindergarten is 10 classes. Grade 1 and grade 2 also have 10 classes at the Warren School. So they take up 10 classrooms with an approximate average of between 19 and 22 students per class. At the Pitaway, it's very similar in terms of the enrollment that you'd expect at a preschool to most preschools. So 43 students in the 3-year-old program, 51 students in the 4-year-old program. They take up 7 classrooms though. So those 7 classrooms are really important to note that that's the amount of space that would just be necessary for students to participate in their daily routines in class, to obviously keep class sizes small at the pre-K level. There's specialized programming space that's also necessary at the pre-K level, which is similar to any other elementary school as well, where you have to make sure that you have ample space to offer students specialized services for occupational therapy, physical therapy, and speech and language. If you move to the next slide, you see the Mendez School enrollment. Currently, as you know, right now we have a multi-grade model which houses students in grades 3, 4, and 5 together, as well as a single grade model which houses our students that are in grade 3, grade 4, and grade 5 independently. Our single grade population, we currently have 8 classes in grade 3. We have 6 classes in grade 4, 7 classes in grade 5. You can see the average student ratio there is anywhere from 23 to 25 students. In our multi-grade population, we have 7 classes with approximately 23 students per class. So the benefits of the 2 different models, that's really the most important thing about this whole project, is what are we going to do to ensure that we're offering our students the best possible opportunity to succeed. Certainly a new building is something that we all want to see, but we have to make sure that we're placing students in the best opportunity to achieve. So we were asked to look at 2 distinct grade configurations, one being the 2 through 5 model and the other being a 3, 4, 5 model. If you look up at these strengths and challenges, one of the biggest strengths here for the 2 through 5 model is that we'd be able to, as a town, create a K to 1, a pre-K to 1 early elementary or early childhood center if you have students exiting the Warren in 2nd grade and moving over to the Mindess model. So that's one huge benefit of it. However, the other benefits are having some continuity between the 2nd and 3rd grade teachers, and an increased amount of collaboration between 2nd and 3rd grade teachers. I'm not going to read the entire slide to you, but having the opportunity to have some potential clusters for grades 2 and 3 and grades 4 and 5 offers a different educational opportunity, offers some opportunity for our 2nd graders to have some more role models at the 5th grade level and some older students to look to. But it also offers up some challenges that are pretty unique. One that's not even here that we had on an earlier slide that you should know about is the staffing. It would definitely offer some staffing challenges to our school system. Right now we do have some shared staff between the preschool and Warren. We have many staff members who go between 3 different schools. So if we were to bring over a grade level worth of students, you're now going to have to figure out how our staffing changes would either need to increase or change based on this new configuration. Most significantly, it would cause some challenges with our specialists. Our specialists we'd have to figure out how to ensure that students at the pre-K, K1 school were still getting the same amount of time with our unified arts staff, and now we'd have to have additional unified arts staff for our grade 2 students who would be joining us because we would not have the current staff at Mendez to offer the support to all those students in the unified arts. So that is an important point to think about. In terms of the grade 3 to 5 model, the biggest strength is it's what we know. It's what we're already doing. It's the way that we're already teaching our children. We have a model, we do believe it works. We believe our 3 through 5 model is a successful model. When Mr. Adams asked me a pointed question about the differences between the 2, I told him that in my opinion, the the most significant impact would be for the youngest students, the pre-K, K1 students. They would have the biggest impact to allow for that early childhood center. I think that the current model that we have here at Mendez works. I believe having students 3, 4, and 5 together is an excellent model. It's something that we know and something that we're used to. Our curriculum is currently written for grades 3, 4, and 5 to be together. And it would offer our transition that we're moving to right now for a unified Mendez to also be a little bit more smooth in the fact that we would not be incorporating a new grade level into the mix. Potential clustering and specialized programming for 3 through 5. One of the things that we talked about is if we move to a 2 through 5 model, you have some specialized instructional programming that has to happen, and you get into a potential age range with our special education instruction in our classes that have specific amount of time outside the general education setting. We have to be very careful with those groupings to ensure that we were in compliance with the state's regulations regarding special education law. So we'd have to make sure that enough students, did not meet a certain criteria in their age range in those 2 rooms. With our 3 to 5 model, we know we would never run into that issue. Again, we believe long-term relationships are already there. Our schedule is currently created for 3 to 5 model. And then the challenges, the transition from 2 to 3 is indeed a challenge. But we would be transitioning no matter what. So I think it's important to note that we feel confident that our 3 to 5 model is an excellent model. We do think that it would be a great opportunity for our town if we went 2 to 5. I think either solution is excellent. I do think one more piece of information is important to note that is not on the slides, because this was new information that we've gathered over the course of the last, I would say, week and a half or so regarding the new Student Opportunity Act. And what the Student Opportunity Act has now called for is eventually the state of Massachusetts moving to universal pre-K. So we've got to keep that in mind as we make our decisions moving forward, and whether or not any decision we make, how that decision would ultimately impact our own town and our building space for universal pre-K potentially down the road. So I think that's really important to note as well.
Great, thank you. I'm Ken Kovacs with Flansburgh Architects, and I just want to touch upon, the importance of this process. And working on a project with the MSBA allows you those opportunities to study different grade configurations, and I think that's a real benefit to this project. Whether it's the right one at the end of the day, that's what we're vetting out right now with the school building committee, school committee, and so it's a great opportunity not just to look at design options on different sites, but understand where you're going educationally in the future. Some of what we're also going to do is touch upon the sites. As Jeff from Compass stated, there's 2 sites being considered. The Mendez Elementary School, basically to the north behind this school, and at the middle school. And I'm going to walk you through kind of some of the thought process of selecting those sites and some advantages, disadvantages of both sites. So here at the Mendez School, the buildable area is highlighted in this orange color in the athletic fields, and then kind of encroaching into the wooded area. And that's going to create some flexibility to look at both design options that are being studied. The 3-5 for 635 students is approximately 103,000 square feet. And the 845 for grades 2 through 5 is approximately 130,000 square feet. So we need to find sites that can accommodate that program. And it's not just the building, it's parent queuing and drop-off, and we had a traffic engineer come in, and they looked at the volume. And for the largest option being studied, you need approximately space for 80 cars to queue up. And that equates to 1,600 linear feet. So that's a lot of space. And typically, we're going to show you that results in kind of a one-way loop driveway around the building. And that's going to avoid some of the backups you have here. And also, there's quite a few buses that we need to accommodate. And the goal is to separate buses from cars and create a safe environment. And there's all these layers that go on top of these design options, and that's one of them, as well as play area. We want open grass play area, but we also want area for play equipment. And typically, we look for around 20,000 square feet. So we have a long queuing area, bus drop-off, large buildings, and play area. And so they all get tested on the sites. And what's important to know at the Mendez site is the school construction project is going to incur while you have ongoing school activities here. So the construction will occur to the north. It'll be fenced off. There'll be proper construction separation. We'll look at the access coming in off of Concord. There might be an option off of Fisk Road to the north, east. And essentially, for 2 years, students are going to go to school here and have some disruption, but this is not uncommon for school building projects. But that's what you're going to have for a project at the Mendez site. As well as the demolition of this building will also occur, and that's not a reimbursable expense per the MSBA kind of requirements. So we have ongoing school activity. We have to route utilities in here, and we want to make sure that we have a design and approach that limits disruption to ongoing activity. So after about 22 to 24 months, at the end of the school year, this building will come down and the remainder of the site work will be completed. That's approximately 6 to 8 months, and that would complete this project. So shifting over to the middle school, the area that we would look at for the buildable zone would be highlighted in the orange here. For the building, we would look at it in the northwest area, right here, north of the fields, and along this area, we would look at primarily parking. We have wetlands along that easterly edge. What this would result in is a construction project that would obviously not impact the students here, but could be built more of a campus with the middle school, away from the day-to-day activities of the students. But you will lose athletic fields as part of that project, the baseball field and the soccer field. So this is what it would look like during the construction. There would be some disruption. We'd have to separate construction vehicles off of West Union Street to access the site, as well as utilities. But this is ongoing, and there could be developments with this site as we explore it further. So what I want to do now is give you a look at what the school building committee is evaluating. They've looked at many options on both sites with both grade configurations, and we're going to show you quite a lot. We don't want to overwhelm you tonight, but you're going to get a sense of it, and you can download the show after. And we just want to give you a sense of what the school building committee is evaluating, discuss some of the criteria that they'll be discussing, and give you kind of a walkthrough of the process moving forward. So we'll begin with option C. So some options have already been evaluated. As the OPM had suggested before, or stated before, we've had a long list and we began to narrow those down. And we're going to spend time on the base of these options, but then there'll be a corresponding option that'll be the same level of detail, but the smaller school. So it's simply removing an academic wing. So the slides do, in a sense, duplicate, and I'll explain as we go through. And I'm going to shift over to the boards probably in a minute after I go through the site. So this is an option at the Mendez for the largest school being studied. In the purple, we have the academic wings. And it's important because there's an educational plan that's part of the MSBA requirements that was written by the district. And for each grade, so for instance, grade 3 would have 2 classroom pods of 5 classrooms. So where you see one of the A's, that's 5 classrooms with some special education space, and per grade they'd have 2 of those 5 classroom pods. So this is going to be reoccurring for all these design options. Also in the educational plan, grouping the community use spaces such as the auditorium, the gymnasium, or the cafeteria, the gymnasium, the media center, administration. We're calling that the community wing. So that can encourage a lot of after-school use. And it was important that the academic wings could be separated from the community functions. So that's why you see the 2 colors here. And that's going to be a reoccurring theme that we always want to have the opportunity to keep them separated for after school and perhaps summer programs. So in this option, you see it's behind the school. We have 2 academic wings going to the east with the community function centered in the plan with parking on either side. And this loop road what's dashed in here, that's that 1,600 linear feet I was talking about to accommodate the pickup and drop-off. Labeled here in F, that's the 20,000 square feet of play area. And in this option, after the demolition of the school, where G is noted, this would become your play area, open grass play area. And here's an axonometric drawing of the massing of what that may look like. So this is a two-story option. And then we go into the floor plans a bit. And now I just want to ask, can everybody see this? Or we have a corresponding board that might show some more detail. So I can pull that ahead. Hello? Yep. That's loud. So we'll just experiment with this. If this doesn't work, we'll go back to the projection. So as you can see, this is the site plan with the wings. So you have, for this one, for instance, this would be second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade on the upper level. And here's the community function. Here's that long access for the parent pickup and drop off. And they meet at a new entry plaza in front of the school. And then this would be your corresponding play area. And then looking into the plan, what's interesting here is you would enter the school and you'd have all these common spaces used, and you'd be able to lock off the academic wing for after-hours use. And the pod configuration provides an opportunity for collaboration. So within each of these pods, we're able to create a common academic space or team space. And so we feel this is a successful plan. And then if we look at its corresponding 635 option, it's simply removing one of the academic wings. So when you look at the big difference between the two options, you're eliminating that one grade. We're keeping everything else the same. And then you have a third, fourth, and fifth. So pretty straightforward. Do you want me to pull that one out? Yeah. So another way to look at this option is we looked at it flipped. And this is right along the edge of the kind of the knoll, the hill, the wooded area. And we have some physical models over there if anybody wants to take a look after. And this one locates the community function kind of nestled in the woods, while the academic wings are in the field, if you will. Same kind of entry plaza, play area, and a large space for the open fields. Here's the axonometric. So you see the community function with the administration, the entrance are very visible, welcoming, and then the academic wings kind of fade into the background, if you will, a little more isolated from the main parking area, kind of the hustle and bustle of the main community functions. But again, getting into the plan, you're seeing these opportunities for either outdoor classrooms, all clustered around these team commons. So the academic experience isn't just classrooms off of a hallway, but classrooms that are all configured around open collaborative space. And we think that's very important, and that's what resonates with the educational plan. So in this option, it's the largest one being studied, so you can imagine 2, 3, 4, 5. And then this one is simply the same thing. And just eliminating that one grade. So this would be 3, 4, and 5. Yeah, absolutely. So this is option F that looked at it completely different in a way that the community core spaces were flanked by 2 academic wings. And on the larger option, it makes a lot of sense. You could have a lower school, of 2 and 3, and an upper school of 4 and 5. But we wanted to look at something completely different. All the other options you'll see, the academics kind of on one side, communities on another. This is a different approach, kind of a very traditional symmetrical approach. So we have our parking, drop-off, play, field, and then again, academic wings flanking the community functions. So this would be a lower school, 2 and 3, 4 and 5. Thank you. Similar configuration, the smaller enrollment being studied, and this eliminates one of the grades. So this could be 3, 4, 5, or however the pieces want to kind of get juggled around. So those are the options at the Mendez site. All of them are behind the school, and 2 of the options have the academic on one side, community on the other, and just one option is completely different with the core in the center and the 2 academic wings flanking for an upper and lower school. Are there any questions you may have before we go to the middle school site? No? We'll move. And we have, at the end, we can go into more detail, and then we have the physical models that we can take a look at as well. So what's valuable about this process and testing out this kit of parts, if you will, again, 130,000 square foot building. We're trying to look at it as 2 stories. We have the play area, we have the parking demand. We see for the largest enrollment, probably 250 parking spaces. The 635 enrollment, around 200. So you have a lot of program. And when we began to look at the middle school site, you could see how it was stressed a bit. And we started the process by looking at the 845, and it does fit. It's a little tighter than you'll see at the Mindess school site, but part of the process we want to go through and understand the pros and cons of same program, 2 different sites. So here we have the academic program to the north, the community functions to the south, and what's important here is the cafeteria and the gymnasium can open directly to the play area, and the multi-purpose field could also be used to support the fields that they currently have here over at Mendez for recess. We have parking justified along the east side, and then again, that 1,600 linear feet for parents picking up and queuing, wrapping around the building, and then the bus drop-off. So looking at the plan, you'll enter into the administration, into the community core for the gym and the CAF, and then there's an outdoor classroom or a courtyard that brings natural light into the plan, and we have, again, our 5 classroom pod that repeats. So in this option, grades 2, 3, pulled together by kind of a common team area, 4 and 5 on the second level. And part of the kind of feedback with the school building committee, I think instantly everybody can see that it's a little tight. It works, but it's a little tight. So we began looking at different configurations of this. And going 3 stories. And that's not uncommon for elementary schools that we're seeing being built around here in the Commonwealth. So similar plan with the core to the south and access to the fields and the main parking. And then the academic wing loses one of the blocks. And so you can see it begins to free up the landscape a little bit and provides a bit more flexibility. So when we look at the plan, you're entering into the community core, and in here, you'll see what happens when you have 3 pods on the first level. For the grades, this might have to be a 2nd grade house on 2 levels, and a 3rd grade house on 2 levels, and a 4th grade house on 2 levels. So you lose a little bit of flexibility in grouping them, and then the upper level would be 5th grade. One of the advantages to going to 3 stories is you provide some opportunity to access some of the 2nd level roofs, and we see a lot of green roofs that are being populated. So it's roof area that becomes educational space. And so we think that's important to take advantage of that. Yeah, so it's outside space. So yeah, so there's, play area that you'd see on the ground plane, but if you can take advantage of the roof area, there's opportunity there. And so sometimes we see planters or decking, terrace type activities. Okay. So this is an option where we're looking at the 635 with a similar configuration. So the community functions to the south with access to the play, and then the 3 classroom pods. Okay. So in here you could imagine grades 2, perhaps stacked, 3 stacked, grades 3, 4, and 5 stacked. So again, you lose a little bit of the flexibility because you're only dealing with 3 pods to move the students within those 3 grades. But it works, and there's some nice academic spaces that can be captured. So you see a large team commons between the 3 pods and some enrichment spaces within there, and then courtyard spaces as well to bring light into those areas. And so another way to look at this option is compressing it as much as you can and freeing up the site. So in here, this is a 635 option for grades 3, 4, and 5 on 3 stories. So same core, and here you have the academic wings. So you can imagine 3, 4, and 5. And again, not uncommon to have a 3-story elementary wing, but this creates the smallest footprint for the 635 enrollment option. And we're testing all this, and it's brought back to the school building committee, and they're going to have criteria, and they're going to be evaluating all these options. So as you see, the program doesn't change. It's just how the puzzle pieces fit on the site to take advantage of it. And then here's a very straightforward option where we have, again, your gym, your cafeteria, some enrichment spaces of music, art, an outdoor classroom, and then again, 3 simple pods to the north. And this creates some relief within the landscape. And so again, first, second, third. And then for this 635 enrollment option, it's 2 stories and very straightforward. And this would have some nice opportunities, again, to separate the community use from the academic, and also some interesting team spaces within each of those 5 classroom pods. So then the last option went back to looking at the largest enrollment at 845, and probably the most efficient layout we could pull together. And so we have a large area. The plan is slightly skewed, frees up some breathing room around the multi-purpose field, and very straightforward L-shaped academic bars with the core. And so on the largest enrollment, you could have 2, 3, 4, and 5. So a very straightforward plan. And then converting that to the 635. Again, simply eliminates one of the wings here, and we have some art spaces located on the upper level. So that walks everybody through where we are with the design options, and this is what the school building committee, they have a meeting tomorrow to begin the evaluation of these options.
We all want to be able to hear you, Jimmy.
Oh, my. The site plans are all your current ideas of change from the original. We have a crazy bylaw that says that all water, rainwater or rain runoff water or any other water have to be maintained on the site. Now, does that take that into consideration here?
Yes, all stormwater and runoff from the parking, the buildings, and at the middle school site, we need to consider even the existing middle school to an extent with all the impervious pavement. And we have a civil engineer who will create narratives to capture all that with a stormwater system. So yes, that's part of the pricing. So you're seeing the design, but we also are creating estimates. And so the stormwater management system is part of that estimate, yes.
If Mendez is moved to where the middle school is, will traffic be going in through the MBTA access road, or will it be going in through the middle school driveway?
Is there access, if it's at the middle school site, is there access from the MBT access road or off of West Union? And currently,
So currently, we do not own that land, but we're in discussions with, I think we would like access there regardless of this project, right? Even from current situation at middle school, having another form of egress, access and things like that. So that is something that impacts both the, not even just the operation of the school, but utilities that could come from there as opposed to all the way runs from 135 or from where the middle school is, depending on that. Also construction access. And so for a project at the middle school, acquiring that, it makes a lot of sense. It would make it a much more viable project for sure.
So in an ideal world, yes, that's what you hope for, but it might not.
We can't show it on the plans right now because we don't own it or have easements for access right now. Whereas if you notice on the Mendez site, he did mention Fisk Road because our property line goes actually over Fisk Road. So you'll see over there, we actually could use construction access off Fisk if we needed to or wanted to for the Mendez option because we currently do own across Fisk Road, actually. Yep, go ahead.
I have like 3 questions.
That's fine. Yeah.
If Mendez gets moved to the middle school, the 2 schools will not share buses, correct?
Correct. So there's nothing about combining them other than having a campus feel from that perspective. So the busing is something we'll work out. I believe Jim and everyone has looked into it. At most, we'd be probably adding a bus, but again, those are details that we're already looking into as to what the impact would be and servicing 4 grades and what does that look like. So yes. Anything else? Rob?
I'm going to stand up because, well, does this project include replacing seats in the cafeteria? Because these are, so I just had just a few quick questions at this point. One is you talked about the need to queue 80 cars. Where does that come from? And it's been a little while since I picked up a kid at a school, but I'm wondering where, is that being given as a necessity and where does that come from?
so part of the feasibility study, and we're required to do this, is have a traffic study that's on site. So they observed the pickup and drop off at the middle school site and the Mendez site. And what they do is they look at it in 15-minute intervals and dropping off at this school at one point for 635 students, or 600 in your current enrollment, 670, was approximately 60 cars at one time in a 15-minute interval. So they add more queuing space to that for the largest enrollment. That's how we got to 80 cars. So the pickup is sometimes the most stressful because people arrive early and begin that queuing, and 80 cars goes quick. And that's why you need that length for that storage, that vehicle storage length on site so it doesn't back up onto Concord or onto West Union. Yep. But it's part of a traffic study by our traffic consultant.
I guess the only thing else I'll say about that is, if it creates an expensive and sprawling project, that we should look at ways of managing that rather than just accepting that as a reality. But the other thing I wanted to ask about was all these different options. What you're not showing, for example, is the number of mature trees that would be cut for each option, and I know we have a whole section on sustainability here. So I would just suggest that as we go through this process that you lay out a number of pros and cons, and especially, when we're thinking about children and climate change, and this is really their inheritance, that we have a project that is as sustainable as possible, and one of it be, we're clearing mature trees here, so, in whatever option. So I think that would be an important factor to have. So thank you.
So to address both those things, Rob, first, the queuing, as you'll see on all of them, it's usually going to use that loop road around, so it doesn't increase the size. That loop road is needed for access for emergency vehicles anyway. So in some projects, you'll see that maybe it's not paved all the time or whatever, but it's there. We're just paving it and using that for queuing, so that wouldn't impact the project from that perspective. And I can let Ken add to this, but from probably the most impactful from a mature tree point, it would be here, the one that sits back into the wood a little bit. But I think it's safe to say we will be net positive for trees. If we cut down one tree, we're probably going to plant two. So we will be net positive on that, and similarly to any wetlands. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that comment came up at the last community forum, and we understand the importance of it. Absolutely.
So my question has to do with the play space, the outdoor green space for the kids. So thinking about the site at the middle school, it seems like there's less play space for the kids, and I know they can utilize the turf, but I also know that the middle schoolers utilize the turf as well, so it would be more somewhat shared space. Whereas now on the Mendez site, I know the kids have quite a bit of space, so I just wanted to just ask sort of how that's going to get kind of reconciled.
Yeah, I think for starters, that's why we want to make sure that we get, say, that 20,000 square foot range just for play space. I think supplementing with the multi-purpose field is a good thing. That would have to be scheduled with, their recess time. But you certainly will not, as you see in a lot of the Mendez options, the grass play area is given back in all those options. There's just not the opportunity because it's monopolized by the parking spaces at the middle school. So.
And for the most part, the turf field isn't used during the same time as recess would be. And certainly, that even if they did, it's most of the time for the middle schoolers, they get like 10 minutes at the end of their lunch period to go out there, and they never venture out that end anyway. But yeah, so the idea is you're still going to have, and we're trying to compress, as you saw with the so we always started with a 2-story 845 option with everything. That's kind of your, I don't want to say worst case scenario because it sounds bad, but it's your biggest footprint to make sure that fits. And we're working to, as you saw, if you just stick an 845 on there and you don't do a lot of manipulation, it's tight. And so you're really squeezing in that play space and things like that, especially with the loop road going around the building. But as we work with the design and things like that, we will free up outdoor space and probably have a bit more. It won't just be, hey, you're either on a play structure or you're in the turf. There'll probably be some middle ground there as well.
Yeah, thank you.
So right now you're having like the 635 versus 845. What about room for growth? Like if as the town grows and more students come in?
So part of the requirement for all the options is the academic portions need to grow by about 15% and prove that we can do that with all the options, which that could either be adding a wing or going up. So that's how we would accommodate what the state requires us to do.
If the new Mendez was to be built here at the old Mendez, would that affect outdoor recess during the construction?
it would certainly impact the use of the play space. We would still be able to have a really efficient outdoor recess because we'd be able to utilize the front space instead. So we would lose access to the climbing structure, but I think that we'd be able to have a great recess because the majority of our students really play in the green space on the field, and we would open up the entire front of our school for kids to have recess during that time.
These are all great questions. Keep them coming, because this is going to help the school building committee help with their evaluation.
I wasn't at the last meeting, so this might have been covered, but I was just wondering a refresh on timeline as far as like when this building project would start and when it would be finished.
Yes? All right. So timeline. So the more immediate timeline in front of us is to get the feasibility study completed and then brought back to the town voters. So those major milestones are that the School Building Committee, Board of Selectmen, and the school committee would make a recommendation on the option that would move forward in April. So this April, they would pick the big ticket things, which are the size of the school and which site to move forward on. There it would go into the schematic design phase of the project and come back before the town for a funding vote in the special town meeting anticipated in November with a ballot in December. From there, we would then kick into the design development phase. For a school this size, it takes about a year for the permitting and design to be completed. So by December of 2021, we would be ready to break ground. And overall construction of the schedule is about a year and a half. To build the new school, up to 2 years, depending on the final size and placement of the building. And then there's the takedown phase for the demolition. So a total project would be anywhere from 2 years to 2.5 years, depending on the final placement and whether demo was included.
The goal is
Fall of 2023.
opening in the fall of 2023.
Only because I've lived around this town a while. The traffic pattern, not for the schools as much as the general public is expanding. Legacy Farms in Hopkinton will probably bury us with a second setup because it hasn't even been built yet. The third and fourth setup is grass that's just growing there in Hopkinton, but they're going to have to use Ashland as some travel passage to get their traffic through to wherever they go. So have we considered the expansion of the kind of traffic you will have, not just at the schools, but the traffic running by the entrance of those schools? I think it's just as a matter of, it's not a matter of cost. I'm more concerned with the saving of children because of the probability of a lot of accidents.
Yeah, that's a good point. Excuse me. You know, for the Mendez, obviously, we have the benefit of not being on 135, being a little bit removed to that. So, and if we have the queuing, we actually remove those cars from Concord, which if anybody drives on Concord in the morning or in the afternoon, it's not fun for about 20 minutes or so. So I don't think we'd have an issue there. I think it goes back to the other point with the middle school site. I think the best possible outcome is having some access on the MBT access road and that diverting that traffic to the MBTA lighted intersection there. And again, one of the benefits of that site is the future of the YMCA there. Then we can even potentially have nice, safe ways for those children that are going to be taking advantage of the services there to get there quickly and safely. So, those are good things. We certainly wouldn't want to exacerbate an already challenging intersection in front of the middle school right now, right? That's obviously a difficult thing to manage in the morning currently, and as you said, the traffic through there, not even our traffic isn't going to go down, right? So we want to be cognizant of that. So we might be able to actually take some traffic off there, depending on what the outcome of the project is.
I also would suggest that be used not to frighten people with accidents. We have enough of
Yeah, to paraphrase, just so make sure that everybody else gets it, I'll paraphrase what you said, but just, yeah, the idea that, you know, we want to be cognizant, and we hope that other towns are cognizant of their decisions with what they're doing on their roads, in fact, impact our traffic patterns and things like that. So that's a good point.
Might be a silly question. I'm just kind of learning all of this now. So if you guys are looking to buy the land, I guess, to have an access road from the commuter road area, are you also trying to like buy some of that land to then make this footprint not be as condensed so that it makes it a little bit easier for space?
Yeah, so the impact of that lot, I think we have it on here, right? So there's a couple of impacts. So it's hard to see the sliver here, but essentially it's this land here. And so it can ease a little bit of the site constraints, because now instead of having this be a setback line here, if we own the property back here, this could sit back a little closer to the road and ease some of that stress. And we could potentially have some queuing potentially down there. You know, it's all, so it helps as in the ways I mentioned before, because right now we'd have to, if it's possible to tap into the utilities that are already at the middle school, we'd have to run them all the way over here. If that's not possible, we'd actually have to tap in all the way to 135 and go over, which is expensive. And also construction access and things like that. If this, even to get an easement for construction access is a big deal from here. So yeah, so that property impact has potentially has impact for several different little things.
I guess I'm kind of sitting on the notion of, I forgot about the YMCA. And so I'm curious about if we've looked at that traffic feasibility with the Y, with the new elementary school, with the middle school, with the commuter station out there, how congested do we foresee that to be, or do we see it as more of a positive, I guess?
Yeah, that was part of the preliminary traffic study. If we were taking a deeper dive into the middle school, they would do another assessment, but they calculated based on knowing the YMCA was there, obviously the MBT access and activity. And because we don't have that little sliver, they said, as part of the traffic report, if that was acquired, that would benefit access. But they knew of those other entities. Yep.
I think it's viable either way, but I do think it's something that we would, you know, I think we eventually want to have that access. You know, I think we want that access today, right? I think it just makes sense. Yeah, and no, and I've already spoken with Michael Herbert about it, so it's nothing's a surprise here. This has all been discussed, and they're well aware of it. So.
But to build on what Paul said, the middle school site does survive as it exists today, because the existing Union Street is a double barrel, you know, 2 lanes coming out of the site, and has enough queue length on the parcel itself to handle the additional school. And so getting the MBTA access would make it better, because you provide 2 means of egress and access to the site. But because the existing school is deep on the site and the new school would be deep on the site, there's enough to get people on and off the site reasonably.
Yeah, and just to add with the pricing component of this, so there would be a slight premium for utilities coming from kind of West Union Street in deep into the site. But one of the benefits is the middle school and the elementary school still will have staggered start times, so you're not kind of duplicating that population at one time.
I'm Jim Hanna, and again, an excess, a way to get into the middle school is to come down the old train track way. If you and I think it's still open. If you look at the Metcalf, or not Metcalf, but McGunkle Road, you will find that there's a railroad track running from there all the way across the street in Union Street, right in front of the school. But you can get there from the backside. You can run it right down the Woods area, come up to where the site is, for the railroad passengers site going up the hill to the railroad trains. There's a whole line going right through. It drops you right in the backyard of the middle school. I don't know how many people have looked at that as an example, but that would take a whole load of school traffic. It was only for school only, between the seniors and the kids that have cars and the school buses. It's something that it can be asked for if somebody owns it that we don't know.
Okay, thanks.
Coming off of that comment, there is an Upper Charles Trail connection that would go to the middle school. So the old Trolley Brook Trail is one trail, but it would also connect to other parts of town. So eventually there may be an advantage in terms of pedestrian traffic and being able to walk or bike to the school in that location. I wanted to ask about the theater space. I know that from a previous meeting, I don't think that's reimbursed by the MSBA. So I just wanted to hear kind of the plans for incorporating that into the existing community space there.
Yeah, that's a good segue into some of the things I wanted to share about what the committee has been considering and how we kind of got to these being up here. As he said, we started with option C, right? Well, there was obviously option A and B and things like that before it. So what you'll see on the floor plans is these adjacencies. So for elementary schools, the MSBA does not support auditoriums, right? So we have an auditorium in this school. It's a great luxury. It's an asset. But in a new building, we would not be reimbursed for building that. And I couldn't recommend trying to do it on our own. It would be very, very expensive. So what they do support is what's called a cafetorium, or putting a 1,000 square foot stage attached to the auditorium. And so most of these you'll see for lots of different reasons, but also for the utilization of that space. We will see these adjoined to the gym and the cafeteria. So that way we can potentially gain more usable space for those things. And so, and we play with the adjacencies. We're going to continue to play with them to see how we would want to maximize that. But that's how it's going to be addressed, going forward, would be a stage attached to the common spaces there. And so some of the things I wanted to point out and I think the one on the back is a good, example of, you'll see some of the things that resonated with the school building committee is when these pods, there's a lot of them that, they don't show them awesome here, but there's these common spaces between them. So there were some options that were thrown out there that aren't up here that kind of just had a corridor of classrooms, a corridor of classrooms, a corridor of classrooms. But aside from having nice new rooms that may have better air quality and stuff like that, that's the same building you would have built 20 years ago. And so what really resonated with us is having these pods that kind of create a little community, and they have these external common spaces where that learning can spill out into these spaces. And you can, have some, one of these really great mentoring opportunities for the different ages or whatever happens, movement, right? The kids need movement, gets them out of the classroom. And so these resonated a lot more than, I think this one kind of shows that style of just corridors a little bit more. And so not so many of these resonated with the group. So some of the other things Ken had mentioned was how we blocked off, and here's the community space, here's the academic space. And I want to get into some of the reasons for that and why that's important. One, has anybody ever gone to the middle school for some event that's in the gym and have to traverse half the school to get there, right? That's not awesome from an experience from your perspective, but it's not awesome from a lot of perspectives. So here, we want to create a unified entrance. So we want to have a smaller number of entrances so we can, better understand who's coming and going to the school. We want to have these community spaces here from a sustainability perspective as well. So when he said we can close off the academics, it's not just for, hey, we don't want people traipsing through and doing those things, but it's, hey, these are going to be utilized for about 7 hours during the day. After 7 hours, maybe we don't need to heat them as much, but these community spaces we do. Well, so when we start talking about sustainability in a little bit, you'll come to understand that now, we're really changing the energy consumption and needs for the building because we're doing that. So those are some of the reasons why you'll see these out like that. And a lot of them also are grouped like this because of the flexibility we're going to have here. We might have, and we have some bubble grades that are, where it fluctuates either up or down by almost a full class. So if we had these rigid long hallways that were separated, that makes it a little challenging when we have a bubble class. Whereas here, if we needed to, it's like, okay, here's this class of this grouping of 5 classes. Well, if this one was a low bubble, this one's a high bubble, well, maybe we can, that adjacency isn't bad for that bubble year. So those are some of the reasons we like these. How we arrived at kind of this one, which kind of did push into the trees a little bit, was where the parking was in relationship to the building and how it generally flowed with the site. All our presentations are online, so if you go back and look at some of the earlier ones where this was positioned more down here or over, it didn't flow as well and it didn't sit as well on the site because we could kind of stick it over here, but then you kind of look at the site and all you see is parking and things like that. So, and you'll see that on this option D, it was the same as option C but flipped. And the idea there was twofold. It was, hey, what are the academics wings facing? Are they facing one side or the other? But also, getting that community space closer to the fields, closer to the play area, where essentially on a site like this, the way this works, during non-school hours, this is your active side of the site, right? There's not really any need for somebody to be over here, which is nice. And also, if you look back at the models back there, you'll know that this is a high point in the site, and if that's the gymnasium, well, you don't need windows for the first part of the gymnasium, and that can be kind of buried into the ground a bit more. And so you wouldn't potentially need as big a retaining wall or something like that. So there's lots of different nuances as to why we started. You might say, okay, well, why are we flipping these? And those are the reasons. We're playing with it. We're seeing that, hey, what is the relationship between those community spaces to the external community spaces that are going to be used? But also, how does that impact, the construction, the price? So if we're building larger retaining walls, we're doing these things, it does change. But the other advantage to that might be in this option, this might be staggered a bit, right? So these pods over here might actually be both 2 stories, but go up on the hill a little bit. And what that might do is allow you to have that green roof over here. So now a class can go out and have an academic space outside in a safe environment on the roof. And so now that roof is a green roof. Maybe it's a learning building too, where some of those building services are exposed so that we can, have the kids be learning about that. So those are some of the things that why we, what you're seeing here have bubbled to the top. I think given this stuff, it's been something like 20 some odd plus options that we've kicked around throughout the process. So there's been a lot of consideration there. So, maybe that fostered some more questions that people had, but.
You mentioned that the town would be voting on this at a special town meeting in November. What exactly are we going to be voting on at that time?
So Jeff, do you want to talk a little bit about the process, and then I'll talk about the...
Sure. So you'd be voting on the total package, which is the scope, schedule, and budget. So with the submission in April and then the following one in September, the town boards would be submitting to the Mass School Building Authority that they want to build X size school at X location for X dollars on X schedule. And so those four things come together in what's known as the scope and budget agreement, where the MSBA signs off and says, we will reimburse up to, your percentage is going to be around 55% of all eligible costs. We've talked a little bit about, you've heard us throw around terms of this is not eligible, that is eligible. There are various caps within the MSBA program, but essentially, with their October board vote, the MSBA, they would come back and say, we agree with your request for the size, location, and cost of the project, and we're going to pay X amount of percentage, and that part goes back. So it's a single vote from the town at the town meeting and at the ballot for the project in its entirety. It's not an a la carte vote, it's a single vote.
Okay, so it'll be the school committee and the state of Massachusetts coming up with an agreement of this is going to be the location and this is going to be the plan and the number of students?
So,
and then the town votes yes or no to that?
yeah, so the school building committee makes a recommendation, and the school committee itself and the Board of Selectmen review and agree to that recommendation to then go back to the Mass School Building Authority. So the three boards in town will come to the conclusion about what is the preferred option that they would like to request on behalf of the town.
So if we feel strongly about an option, we recommend getting in touch with the school board?
Yeah, the school building committee, and that's what the venue for tonight is, to introduce all the options and to have a continued dialogue. This is the fourth forum. There is a website. We want you to be involved and to send emails in or correspondence or reach out to the principal. If there are things that you like about the options, please discuss them with us tonight. And then as you think about it after the fact, or you can download it as Paul had alluded to, it'll be on the website to send that feedback into the building committee for their consideration.
Yeah, and so we'll also have, so while we're obligated to have the building committee vote on it, the select board and the school committee, we're also, having FinCom. We want everybody involved. We'll have hopefully 2 tri-board meetings on this. And so, and when we say special town meeting, right now we're not talking about a unique special town meeting. Remember, our special town meeting is our November town meeting that we have every year. That's just called special town meeting because it's not the annual one in the spring. So it'll be part of that. It may also be coupled with the public safety building project as well, because I think the timelines are now on those projects aligning. And what we're voting on from our perspective is separate necessarily from the MSBA. It is the debt exclusion for the project, right? So that'll be a town meeting vote and also a ballot vote for that debt exclusion. And at that time, we will have, a gross number of what we expect that project to be. Jim?
My question is, are these options, as we have them now, are they like a puzzle? In other words, if the school committee decides they want option A, and the other committees want C and D, if that's what they choose, do we have any problem with putting them all together without any other trouble?
Well, so that is the whole idea of, we've presented a couple times to the select board, to the school committee. We hope to have 2 tri-board meetings. So at the end of the day, hopefully we've already had those conversations, and that all 3 boards, the building committee votes to recommend a preferred solution to the town committees that will actually vote on them. So there's 3 votes, but one of them is a recommendation. The other 2 are the binding, hey, this is what we want to submit, right? So the idea is, we need to work through that. and hopefully we have the time, and we're definitely trying to make sure that we have those meaningful conversations early and often, so that we're all on the same page. Like I said, I did a presentation to the school committee on the options at the time with the ballpark construction estimates in, I believe it was January 8th, and the select board beginning of this month. So hopefully there should be no surprises. I believe I'm on the schedule for FinCom tomorrow to in their forum talk about these options. And so I foresee us being completely unified when it comes to that, but having healthy dialogue between now and then. But right. So right now, so to paraphrase what you said, it looks like we're giving you lots of options and menu. These are, maybe options is a bad word. These are the design options we are currently considering. We're not putting forth options for votes. So what is going to go before the voters is what the select board and school committee vote as our preferred solution. But we want everyone's input onto what resonates, whether it's being emailed to us, whether it be showing up here, showing up at what are our meetings, going to any of the select board or school committee meetings and providing input. Ms. Greaves on the select board is vice chair of the building committee. So if you're there, you say something in that forum, it should get back to us, no problem. It's obviously televised, I can go look at it. But yeah, so we're not presenting, it's not going to be a menu option for anyone to vote on. Hopefully we've heard their feedback, we've incorporated it into the design. And again, even at that point, we're kind of, a little bit further along in the design than this. It's not, we're not at a, in May, when we go with a preferred, we're going to be a little bit more detailed maybe than this, but this is the level. We're going to say, hey, this is what we think we're going to, we're going to be kind of fidgeting around with how our adjacencies are working, and to the point where it impacts the project, and then that'll go for May, and then when we go for, in May is when collectively we want as a town to say we want a building here and it be in this configuration, right? We want a 2 through 5 or a 3 through 5. We want it here. So that's the May time frame. And after that, now we're going to start to perform, get more into the schematic design and how those things work.
And all of your approvals are
I would hope so. That's our intention, Jim.
I just wanted to say, the community has to hear that. It's not often they get plugged into the big game.
Yeah. No, so and just to regurgitate what you said, that the community wants to be engaged and wants to, and by all means, that we make every effort we can think of to do that. If there's another method anybody has that we can engage that we're not today, want to do that, everybody's input is important. We were at the Educational Visioning Forum and got a great idea from somebody. Right? So it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what you're, the input, all it takes is one great idea from every forum, and it's worth it. So, yeah, so May we're going to have, we want a building of this size, this configuration at this site, and that's the goal for that, and then we'll get into the schematic design after that. Questions?
More of a comment, but since you were saying feedback is good, just as a parent, I'm more about like the structure, because as far as which one, I mean, that's probably out of my hands. But having things like the green space and more of the outdoor space, I think is really important, as well as, I don't know if you guys have thought, I'm sure you have, but just like bigger windows or like skylight kind of windows, having more of that outdoor light as well as like the inner pods. So I guess as far as comment, I think the pods look much better than the long hallways that like I had back in grade school. And as well as thinking about like the other green space around. I know like things like trails and other use, not just like the slides and the traditional playground.
Yeah, those are definitely things we're thinking about and good comments. So the natural light, we want it and we want to control it. So you can ask Mr. Cairo about, we have some natural light in here that we don't like because they have to cover it up, it's glaring. So we want the natural light, but we want to do it with good design that maximizes it. And you'll see that all these we're looking to make sure that they have the natural light. And then you have the outdoor spaces in the middle that can also provide some light to the common areas and things like that. So definitely things that we're considering.
You mentioned a parcel of land that we don't own up by the middle school, and I'm just curious how that affects the project going forward. If we do get it, and what are the chances of that? What does that look like? And if we don't get it, what does that look like?
Yeah, so essentially, as Jeff said, it's viable as is, because we wouldn't have these options up here if it wasn't viable as is. The impacts are potentially, certainly, flow and convenience, right? So having that access off there after a school is built from an operational perspective is much better. From a construction perspective, having construction access there as opposed to having to come, as one of these, I think the middle school's back here, right? As opposed to having to come off of 135 and all the way over, come over here. And so construction access matters, and also price from a utilities perspective. So I believe, and Rob, you'd probably know, the utilities were all redone when the MBT access were, so we got prime access here. If that was an option, certainly the best is to get utilities here as opposed to even tapping in and going all the way across from a cost perspective. And we're not even sure whether we could tap in here or have to go all the way to the road, and that's certainly a long run for those utilities. So that's essentially the impact, and as I said, there's potentially impact in just easing some of the constraints here and maybe some queuing over there. Those are the considerations, but it is viable as is. It's obviously the ideal is to have that access, especially given the lighted intersection that you'd be coming in on. So. No?
Has ASHPAC weighed in on the 2 through 5 option versus the 3 through 5 option?
Jim, do you know if...
We have certainly reached out to them to have conversation. Kathy Silva has been a part of the conversation the whole time with regard to the 2-5, and I'm sure she's keeping the PAC certainly informed.
Do they have a stance on which
They do not. Not that I know of. They were, right. They were part of it.
Yeah, so the grade configuration is something that has been in the project the whole time, and so ASHPAC was involved in the educational visioning process the whole time, so they've been involved. So none of this is in any way, shape, or form new to them. They've been involved every step of the way, and they've not expressed one way or the other to any of us. They were involved. They said, here's a concern, here's a benefit. They were involved in all that educational stuff back and forth when we had that, but they have not taken a stance that we know of. Should we go over to sustainability then? Is that the next? Yeah. All right.
Let me just go back. Working through it. Yeah. So kind of in the big picture, with the design options, it's important to know that, as the school building chair stated, when you look at these plans, again, we're kind of at the 20,000 foot level, but there's these patterns that you'll see reoccurring, such as the academic pod that have the kind of community team space, the adjacencies with the cafeteria, the stage, the gymnasium. All of this is translated into the educational plan that the district is writing, and that is one important document that the MSBA wants to see is successful when they go to approve the project, that the educational plan written by the district is translated into a floor plan. And so when you kind of think about the vision and, you know, review these plans, keep that in mind. A big part of the project has been sustainability. Our community forum number 2, our sustainability consultant is Green Engineers, and our mechanical electrical engineers is Vanderweil. They presented, and we also had the sustainability committee at a recent school building committee meeting, so that was really informative. And we know how important it is to your town with the town meeting vote in the last fall being net zero within 20 years. So this school project, as it was presented, is to strive to be net zero, or at least consider what we need to be net zero ready. And so we take that serious, and there's been a lot of conversation about that. And just kind of a base, when we look at the school projects, a unit of measurement that we look at is the energy use intensity. That's how much energy is using in kBTUs per square foot of kind of a general building. And the existing Mendez actually served to be a little better than we thought. We think that's because of not a lot of use in the summertime, but we were at 55. If you look at what's code, just to meet building code, you're around 40. So again, this is a unit of measure that's applied to how much energy is being consumed within the building and the site. The target for the net zero is 25, and to do that, we need to look at some measures of increasing the exterior envelope, say from a conventional envelope that may be 3 inches, 4 inches insulation, to super insulating the building, a roof that might be 5 inches insulation going to 10, again, to manage the climate of the building, and that can reduce the energy loads as well. We're looking at different mechanical systems. That was kind of expressed at the last presentation. Our engineers are looking at kind of 3 different pathways, if you will, which would be like an all-electric, looking at electric, gas, hybrid, and other measures. So we're looking at it on all fronts with the building envelope, the mechanical system, electrical system, but obviously sustainability touches greater than that, looking at the water use, looking how we approach the site, a sustainable and sensitive site approach we're always considering. So there's a lot of factors that weigh into this. And that's just a summary. Just want to touch upon, because we know that's very important, and we're going to have ongoing meetings with members of the Sustainability Committee and others throughout this design process. So that just concludes our presentation. Again, giving you kind of an overview where the design is. I know it's a lot of information. I don't expect everybody to understand it tonight, but download it, take a look, and at the next community forum or come to the school building committee meetings, and you can hear that discussion that's going to take place over the next few months. Okay. Any other questions?
You can give feedback right now. You can email us. You can do whatever you'd like. You can do both. As much feedback as we can get.
The feedback I have on the designs, I have my own personal preferences, but the big thing that I'm concerned with the most is the 3-level design, where you'd have the 5th graders on the 3rd level. My son has to go to the nurse's office several times a day for medical reasons, and the idea of him having to go up and down those stairs, he already misses way too much class time. And the idea that he would have to go up and down the stairs several times a day in addition to that to take away more time from the class is concerning.
So I think what I've heard in our meetings is, in general, we would rather a 2-story building, but also note that all of these have an elevator, so it wouldn't be as similar as these would all. A 3-story would have an elevator, so it'd be simpler and safer for him to traverse that. So
Yeah, and a comment for all the designs, looking at what you have right here, this is generally a one-story sprawling building. So all the options, even some that are 3, begin to just pull everything together. So that's a benefit to, looking at new construction. And yes, some of the sites, as you see, as we got to the middle school, began to strategize using that just to free up some ground space. So.
But good feedback, and email it as well. So we just, as much feedback as we can get, always is going to inform the design. And so no questions on sustainability, because at the last forum, we put out options, and quite frankly, everybody wanted to talk about sustainability. So, Rob?
I should probably introduce myself. I'm Rob Scher, member of the Select Board, for those who don't know. So, and I wanted to thank you. This is a great process from what I've seen, and Paul comes and has presented to us many times. So I apologize if I'm repeat questions you've already told me in past meetings. But I did want to say, so thank you for the process. Looking forward to making some tough decisions, and I know it's going to be complicated in terms of the size and the configuration, especially. I did one comment on sustainability, or a question. So I'm presuming that the more compact the buildings are, the less the footprint, generally better for sustainability reasons. And that's what you're looking at as well?
Yeah, so the smaller envelope certainly helps from that perspective. And, just, I had to step out for a second, but just when he went over the slides, so when we talk about net zero ready, I'll kind of sum it up what it means to us. So the process you go by is you try to first, reduce the need and the load the building requires, and you try to seal those things up. Then you try to be efficient with your systems, and then the third step is to augment with renewable, whether it be solar or something like that. So when we talk about net zero or net zero ready, the only difference is that third step, and whether we're taking that at first, or whether we're doing that afterwards. To be net zero ready means you've done the first 2 stages where you have reduced your load as much as you can, you're as efficient as you can be, where you could augment with renewables to reach a net zero. And when we're talking about net zero, we're talking about site net zero across the whole site. Any other questions at all? All right, well, I appreciate everyone coming out. By all means, email us. The building committee email address hits everyone on the committee. I will make sure we get back to you and incorporate anything, any feedback you have. So we have, and just a little bit on the next steps. So we hope to have a lot less options relatively soon. So this week, the school committee will be voting on what their preferred enrollment configuration is, so that 845 or 635. There's lots of things that go into that. It's not even just these 2 buildings. It's what happens at Pittaway, what happens at Warren, and what happens 5 or 10 years from now. And so I don't want to steal Mr. Adams' thunder for Wednesday, but he'll be presenting some information on what he feels is the best at that point, and that'll incorporate, how those other programs influence what we think we should be doing here. So hopefully this month we will have, made some decisions on the enrollment. So going forward, we'll only be talking about a 635 or 845 enrollment, and then narrowing down these options with the community and also the tri-board. All right, if nobody has any other questions, then have a good night. Thank you.